Okay, hi everybody. My name is Lauren Fann. I'm the Pest Management Specialist for the Almond Board of California, and we have three fantastic guests joining us today to talk about spray technology, their experience, and the work they've done. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with Cameraon.
Good morning. I'm Cameraon Boomgaarden with Vann Brothers, just north of Woodland here, about 45 minutes. We're a vertically integrated, family-owned and operated almond, walnut, and pistachio grower. I'm the orchard operations manager with Vann Brothers. Do a little bit of everything on the farm. So,
Thanks. I'm Franz Niederholzer. I'm a tree crop farm advisor with UC Cooperative Extension in the Calusa-Ubiceta area. I work a lot with almonds, some prunes, and walnuts.
I am Bharath Basabri. I am the managing partner for Shiraz Ranch. We farm almonds, pistachios, citrus in Stanislaus County along I-5 close to Newman. And I'm also a contract researcher. I work with all the industry, different companies in the area of pesticides, biostimulants, all the biologicals, and actually most of my research is concentrated on developing biologicals and sustainable type products.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us today. So I'm going to just start right with some of the questions. And it's free for anyone to answer. What types of spray technologies are currently being used in the orchards?
there's many a type of spray technologies, from autonomous equipment to different sort of laser weed management, weed seeking type technology. So you name it, I think there's many technologies that are starting to be explored when it comes to orchard or tree crops.
Yeah. I hear, that when I first came into Extension, the ultrasonic sonar sensors for air blast sprayers had been commercialized, and since then there's the new LiDAR-based systems that I hear them and talked about and being researched. I don't see that many in the fields yet, but I think an intelligent sprayer systems is what that product's called. The weed seekers, the selective down-spraying weed control products are also out there.
Yeah, kind of similar type of stuff. I have experience with some of the a little bit older technologies we use. Like one of the things that we use, the sprayers with electronic eyes. I have one of those myself, and I use it a lot for the non-bearing orchards when you have smaller trees, and instead of wasting the chemical, using that type of machinery, you can cut your spray by several 100%. In other words, you can do maybe 20% of what you would have used. And so, but there are improvements that they're making on those. Initially, when they came out, it was a lot of problems. Improvement that they have made, I think they're making practical differences in the sprays now.
Okay, so with leading up for the next question on that, it's how adaptable is this technology that you guys are seeing in the orchard to different terrains or orchard layouts?
Yeah, Lauren, adaptability is a major issue when it comes to on-farm technology. Not every block is the same shape, size, terrain. It varies, which on our ranch has offered a lot of challenges. Some through trial and error we've overcome, but others just seem to be more tricky than others. So right now, adaptability from orchard to orchard or block to block is certainly a challenge when it comes to this sort of equipment.
Okay, and then with that, some of the spray coverage and assessing the improvement for distribution, and how is that working or you're seeing in the orchards?
I think the tools used are the same, but for conventional systems as well as water-sensitive papers. Really, as far as in commercial settings, I think the primary tool, you can use flagging in the canopy to show where the air goes for air blast sprayers. But as far as deposition goes, or at least where the spray is reaching those targets, water-sensitive paper is the most commonly used and very effective, cost-effective.
I would agree with Franz, Lauren. In a large commercial setting, that technology is we try to keep things as simple as possible, right? Simplicity is key for us. So the methods of measuring are the same ones that we use on our ranch, whether it's evaluating a technology, a piece of equipment that is tech related, or just wanting to fine-tune our plant protection product program, how we're doing that, whether it's an aerial application, air blast, you name it. So simplicity is key for us.
And so also, you know, when it comes to the differences of spray coverage and making sure that your crop is getting, or the trees are getting the sufficient amount, how does the age of the orchard affect this ability for the equipment to move in and out and its ability to get the job done?
It's a huge part of it. I mean, especially in trees where you can't go over the row as you do in grapes or in smaller size controlling apple plantings. You're having to push material out from a ground-based sprayer. The smaller the tree, the younger the tree, the easier it is to get coverage. But you have to adjust your sprayer. That's a much smaller tree, so you have to have the fan and output adjusted so you're not literally blowing it off like some of the dryers in the when you wash your hands. So there is a big difference between the age and the size of the orchards as far as coverage and the settings in the sprayer.
To Franz's point, you know, when we think about orchard equipment, it doesn't typically change in size and in how it's applied, but when we think of the difference in canopy in orchard age and how the density of that canopy may affect the application, the accuracy of that application, it's key, and there's a huge potential there for savings from a labor standpoint, from a material standpoint. So are we utilizing any of that equipment at a commercial level? Not in my personal experience. I know that it is there, but it's certainly there's a huge or tremendous opportunity there.
Yeah, I think it goes back to measuring the deposits and the spray coverage and stuff like that. Not only in the commercial setting, but also in the research. And I've been in the research for 40 some years, and I've seen chemical company reps and stuff developing chemicals on. A lot of time you do on younger trees because you're doing crop destruct research, and we use younger trees. Well, if you go out there and basically inundate those younger trees with a spray, and then you develop your product based on that, you develop a label, you go to the commercial field situation, you have complaints. So I try best to take that into consideration when I'm doing research on younger trees. But if there would be some technologies available that you can actually measure and quantify that would be really fantastic. You know, we were doing research a couple of weeks ago on big almond trees with the Carpophilus beetle. Some of you might have heard about that, and I was working with the UC specialist out of Modesto, and I mean, he's a younger guy. He doesn't have big belly like me. He was able to jump up on the tree and go up to 18 feet high and install one of those or a bunch of those water-sensitive papers so that we can measure how far we're going up with this thing. I mean, if we can have technologies that can do that for us without having to go to the old technologies, that would be really useful.
Okay. So how does how does the use of this technology and like spray technology align with the sustainability goals or regulation requirements for pesticide use?
Yeah, the goals align perfectly in reality. When we look at some of our on-farm sustainability food safety certifications, there's always a point of continuous improvement there. And one of the easiest ones to highlight for us when we are going into an audit or prepping for an audit is a reduction in plant protection products. So, this technology, as I mentioned earlier, it's a tremendous potential for us on multiple levels. So to simplify that, yeah, it aligns tremendously, Lauren.
And then what are some of the reductions with environmental runoff and other impacts to the ecosystem that you can see this as potential?
I think the sensor-based systems for air blast spraying, there's work that Ken Giles did several years ago with the ultrasonic sprayers showed that a significant decrease in off-target and orchard runoff from using sensor-based sprayers. Those particular orchard wasn't a hedgerow where there were gaps between the trees, so I might not have seen that in a hedgerow setting, but smaller trees, younger trees, there's a huge benefit there, and there's less loss in a hedgerow setting where you're really applying material to the canopy.
Okay. Well, so what are some of the cost-saving benefits in terms of labor, fuel, or chemical compared to traditional methods? If you've seen any, or this is where you think there's a potential?
Yeah, I think there's a potential on numerous levels there. When we speak in terms of plant protection products or materials, as Franz and Barat were mentioning earlier, right? We talk about the canopy and how that varies from block to block, age to age, and we think of the potential of excess of an application and how we can reduce that, and what that does from a sustainability standpoint and an environmental standpoint, but also from a material cost standpoint. So the other one that I don't think we've discussed is when we look at that sort of technology, right? We remove either an operator or we limit the operator's control of that piece of equipment. Oftentimes we look at reduction in repair and maintenance costs and how the wear and tear of that machine adds up over the years as well.
So this is setting up for the next question, but have you been using any of these, like some of these technologies on your orchards, maybe some autonomous sprayers or any of this more, some of these more advanced technology sprays? And if you have you seen a return on investment upgrading to newer spray technologies yet, or how's that going?
You've done more of it. I've done a little bit with, or I've participated in some drone projects, and that's really interesting. But the drone technology is changing so rapidly, I really can't comment on that. But I have not used some of the sensor-based equipment or the robotics that I know Cameron's group's got.
Yeah, we've used various forms of technology, ranging from automation, whether it's an irrigation standpoint or an equipment standpoint, different plant sensing technologies. To put an exact figure on return on investment is very difficult, as with all of these technologies, there's been a level of trial and error. We've seen our successes followed with the next day or a day later with extreme challenge. So, we have felt at times as if, we are guinea pigs and we want to be as innovative as we can as growers, right? If we see that opportunity, we enjoy that challenge. We want something that's going to make our lives easier, absolutely. But it hasn't come without its challenges. So we have used varying automated sprayers, different or demoed different weed-seeking technology. And it's difficult to take that leap into using that technology on a day-to-day basis. So again, kind of to my first sentiment there, the simplicity for a grower to see that and to see that immediate impact and to make it simple for the individuals that are operating those machines is key in the success.
Okay.
And also, like in any succession business, if you're looking to move to a, say, more automated system, it's probably best to keep both systems in place to track, just for field monitoring and automation. So there is that that hill to get over where you're still doing both. You're actually adding to the situation where your long-term goal is to reduce. So it makes it a little bit of a challenge to get into, just because there's more work to be done until you get to the point where there's potentially less work.
That's exactly what we've seen, Franz, is we've implemented autonomous sprayers and alongside with our conventional equipment, and for many of the reasons that we've discussed earlier, whether it be the individuals operating that equipment or whether it be the variance in blocks, have led to some of those challenges. So it is difficult as a grower, right, when we're hard pressed, whether it's a timing situation, an economic situation, when you see the conventional method that is maybe outpacing that technology, it can be demoralizing at times. Does it discourage us or leave a sense of disinterest? No, not at all, right? We view these tools as, again, a tremendous opportunity, but it's difficult when you do see that side by side. It is that extra level of work. It is that period of integration.
Well, the return on investment on many of these things at the grower level is obvious. You can measure when you're looking at the, let's say, pesticide reduction, when you're using technology. That's easier to monitor and it is easier to document. Some other things in terms of return on investment, additional costs. A lot of these equipments are very expensive, and and also when you look at the almond economy these days, getting into these newer technologies, initial expenses are very significant, and those have to be taken into account. And I hope that the almond prices will go up a little bit more so we can afford these kind of things.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely what we need, growers, is to have a better price on almonds, and all the other commodities as well. It'd be great to be able to help them with this new innovation and getting some of that equipment. So when it comes to the equipment and you have it, you're using it, things are working, how easy is it for the technology to operate and maintain for the average orchard worker?
It is difficult. It is extremely difficult. And touching on what I had mentioned earlier as far as simplicity, I personally have extensive experience with automated irrigation systems. I do not operate our automated sprayers. We have an individual that does that. Very, very highly educated, very sharp individual that spends a lot of time troubleshooting these issues, whether it's hardware or software related. When it comes to some of the issues that he faces, it is a very, very challenging aspect of that integration period. I would say that I won't say it's impossible, but it is very close at the current state to put that level of technology or that price of that piece of equipment into somebody's hand and not know exactly how well it's going to go. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a significant challenge for many growers I'm familiar with. That's not to say it's the end of it, but it's a big deal. It's in a very busy, cost-conscious environment, to add a layer of technology that's may be challenging to the crew is a big ask.
I think there'd be some value as well in including individuals that are going to be operating these, right? Because oftentimes, when I'm approached with a new technology or a new idea, right, it's exciting, it's interesting. You see that great potential, but I'm not the one that's operating that on a day-to-day basis. I won't say that I'm an expert on that. So I think there's a disconnect there when we look at the individuals that are purchasing, managing that equipment versus the individuals that are operating that equipment.
So what would you say would be some of the training requirements that are needed in order to operate some of these machines? Vast
amount of training. I think it's easy to say, hey, here's a training on how to operate this, right? Here's a grower portal, here's a pamphlet, here's a book. That's simple, right? I think that teaching somebody to operate may be the easiest part, but teaching that individual what to do when 2 machines go down and 2 are still going. You know, what do they do? Do they stop all 4 machines, therefore hindering efficiency, or do we keep those 2 going, maybe not with the level of monitoring that we're getting when everything's running? You know, I think I summed it up for you, Lauren, when we were discussing this, but to train an individual or the individuals that are trained on our ranch to run the equipment that we have, at a minimum takes about a week to do. Now, when we look at the grand scheme of things, the big picture, that's not a lot of time, but when we look at training somebody right before hole split or right before a full bloom spray, that's time lost, and that's key. So the training period is difficult, and oftentimes one of the aspects that's not covered in the training is troubleshooting. You know, what happens when those little things go wrong? You know, when we look at the little things, it could be again, hardware, equipment related, or it could be connection, it could be software related, and so we're really looking at an individual that has to address potentially 2 problems. And how do we train for that? That's difficult. Sometimes that's experience, which unfortunately leads to losses of efficiency.
Having training wheels sometimes with, you know, you can train somebody, but then having some support, off-site support that's readily accessible as you're getting experience with it, training wheels analogy, I think could be an important part.
But the good news on all of these, a lot of farms as I go around, there are a lot of younger, more educated people coming into the farming, and that's going to be very beneficial in terms of adopting and helping to adopt these newer technologies. So that's the good part.
That's great. So, you know, part of some of the pushes to move towards some of these advanced technologies is due to, you know, trying to be more efficient, trying to maybe reduce labor costs. Has there been any where there is additional person you didn't expect you needed, that you removed for a piece of equipment and an additional person, but now there's a new role that needs to be filled?
Yeah, and I think, you know, each farm is going to be different. Each block within a farm is going to be different, as we discussed earlier. But yeah, we've found that you know, when we talk about autonomous spray equipment, we have the individual that's operating them, the individual that knows the software, the ins and outs of that equipment, the mapping, the setup, the individual that's pressing play and stop, right? And then we have an individual that is usually mixing that plant protection product, filling sprayers, and that was what our initial plan was. Is okay, you know, for a 4 spray crew, we're going to have 2 individuals, and that sounds great on paper. It sounds great planning, but in practice, it is not reality. You know, we've seen, just due to the situation that I had mentioned earlier, of what happens when 2 pieces of equipment go offline and the other 2 are still going, or what happens when a number of other issues arise. You know, we've had to add an additional person to the operation of that equipment, and that individual is usually in a pickup truck or an ATV that is you know, monitoring as well. So really, we've taken what we thought was a 1 person or 1 individual role in monitoring, and it's developed where we've seen a necessity to have 2.
Okay. Well, that's definitely something that you only learn, it seems, when you have the problem that arises and you need that person there right now and not waiting. So knowing that is also really beneficial, and trying to help to predict for that would be really important. So another question is, are there any emerging technologies that could further improve spray precision in the orchard that we didn't mention?
I think we touched, well,
No, go ahead.
there's things that are out there that have been patented and been brought to the market that are, you know, just beginning to be initiated, I think, and how you use those on different fields. but I think we've hit on all of
How
them.
about drones?
Well, thank you. I'm really quite interested in drones, although I had a really interesting experience. Just a quick sidelight. I was in a research plot a couple weeks ago, and the researchers were there, and they were on the ground doing the researching, but the drone crew, which was using the super expensive sensors, that was a third party. And they handled all the drones, so the researchers could focus on their thing, and the drones. So we may come to a world where maybe the drone spraying is done by a specialized outfit, not so much on farm, or at least is being offered as that. Drones have, for targeted strategic spraying, edges of fields, drift-prone places like that, I think are very. I think it's very interesting to see how drones pan out. They're not a silver bullet, but I'm really quite interested. I don't know if you've worked at all with them.
No, I don't have any experience on the farm level with drones when it comes to applications of plant protection products. When it comes to aerial imagery and DVI, yes, we do utilize a drone, right? But one of the difficulties that Franz and I were discussing earlier was, again, the tremendous potential for a drone application, right? But oftentimes when we look at an almond, a walnut, pistachio block, large continuous acreage and the ability for that drone to deliver its payload, if you will, right? When we look at typical almond applications, we're talking anywhere from 70 to 100 plus gallons an acre, and for our ranch, that would be essentially one pass with the drone, and we'd be stopping to fill up on every row in some cases. So, as Franz mentioned, that is a technology that offers great potential, but for that to be in a farm manager's hands, in a ranch foreman, a spray foreman's hands to operate on internally would certainly be a challenge.
So I've been working with a company off and on in the last couple of years who are developing drones, and they contacted me and they wanted me help them with regard to the orchards. As we're talking about here, the biggest challenge for them is the spray volume. They have significant regulations, how big that a drone can be, and how much of liquid they can carry. So right now, I mean, the highest amount they're carrying is something like 20 gallons or something. And I mean, you can do maybe 2 acres with each load. And so that is one of the challenges. And when I left them last time, I said, this is the area that you need to work. Now we have to, from the biology end of it, maybe we can do something that we can get away with a spray volume of lower spray volumes. But when it comes to almonds, and so I have a couple of crops that I have more experience with. Citrus is one of them, and almonds another one. And both of these are sensitive to spray coverage. Like in citrus, we have California red scale that we spray 500 gallons per acre. And you have to penetrate all the way to the inside of the canopy. So that's a challenge there. In almonds, we're dealing with navel orangeworm. And spray coverage, spray timing is extremely important to control that pest. The other challenge we're working, state regulations, federal regulations, they are limiting our access to pesticides. We know that every single year we're losing a pesticide. So we're pushed to develop products that are going to be more biological, more environmentally sustainable, more safe products, but these products all have limitations. And the biggest limitation is going to be they are requiring that the biological material get to the target pest. We don't have access to Lorsban, that you spray that and the fuming action kills everything out there. So you have biological material that needs to get to the pest. And to do that, we need to have a better spray technology today. And the current spray technology, to my knowledge, is not really up to that challenge yet. And that's why Almond Board, University of California, to control navel orangeworm, we have to go to cultural methods, really. I mean, you have to do your mummy removal, sanitation, this and that. And if you rely on pesticide, the technology today is not sufficient to control that pest. That's an example.
No, I think that's a tremendous example. And to touch on your question, Lauren, of emerging technologies, I think all of these technologies are emerging as we discuss them in a commercial setting, right? I think it's simple to see that, yeah, there's an idea, it's in practice, but reality is tough out there. There's many different challenges, and we view these technologies as a great opportunity, but also at the same time emerging, and we're okay being innovative, but at the same time we like to be strategically innovative.
So I have just a kind of question I didn't ask earlier that got shuffled to the bottom. So when it comes to some of the technologies and what do you see the potential in this area to be able to reduce human intervention, so and exposure to some of the things that are in the orchards?
Yeah, when we talk about reducing exposure, reducing excess in applications, this is a tremendous opportunity for us to implement a technology, as we've discussed kind of at length with variances in canopy, right? When we look at a mature almond orchard, right, there isn't much of a gap in between trees in a given row, but when we look at a first, a second, a third leaf block, there's a significant gap there, and with a current conventional spray, oftentimes that spray pattern is not being turned off in between trees. So there's a tremendous opportunity there with different plant sensing technology or canopy density technology to reduce not only exposure to an applicator or to individuals working within that field, but also different environmental impacts, as we discussed, and subsequently leading to a larger return on investment.
Yeah, I would agree. The young orchards, there's more opportunity for savings, and then also for environmental impact. So as opposed to an annual farm where year in, year out, you have basically the same pattern to follow. In orchards, you've got young blocks, young orchards, mature orchards. There are some strategic areas of focus that I think will really help technology take off.
And so I have one last question, and if there's anything that we missed, you're more than welcome to follow up. But maybe this isn't just curiosity. So with all these emerging technologies, with all this new room for innovation, do you see the potential for, which we're not really planting new almond orchards yet, but do you see that there's a potential for designing your orchard with the idea of having the technology being in that space? Because as of right now, we're having to have we have orchards and we're creating technology that fits that space. Is there the potential for developing your orchard around the idea of integrating these new technologies?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Lauren. And right now it's how can this technology fit the orchard, right? When we look at the region or the location of the ranch that I work in, cellular reception is a major issue. Oftentimes you have reception and you drive 5 feet and 10 feet and you lose reception, right? So when we talk about the deployment of technology within an orchard block, whether it be an autonomous piece of equipment, an adaptation to a current piece of equipment, a sensor within a block, I think long-term, big picture that there is an opportunity there for growers to consider that as they develop an orchard or plant, but also we're realistic, right? So growers are stubborn. Growers, oftentimes don't like being told what to do. So it's a balance there. I think it's certainly something that as we look at redeveloping orchards, we will be cognizant of, but at the same time, we wouldn't be implementing major changes just to satisfy the needs of that technology. And to simplify that is, we all, for the most part, have an iPhone, right? And how many times has that iPhone changed in the last 5 years? So technology is always evolving. When we look at the life of an orchard, we could be looking anywhere from 20, 30 plus years, and by the time that orchard's in its later stages, maybe that technology is not quite the same. Maybe there's been 3 or 4 different iterations of that technology. So I do think it is something that we should consider, but at the same time, also consider with caution.
I think there certainly is potential, as Cameron was mentioning, that orchards are, and the orchard investment is at least hopefully a 20-year deal. It's hard to, things being planted now are following closely on recent practices, but having technology that the development of the technology that we're talking about, sensor-based ground sprayers, drones from above, with spinning disc technology, so your droplet pattern's much tighter than, say, a hydraulic nozzle. That sort of thing, I think, will fit into the new systems that are developed over time, but it will have to be a system program. There'll have to be, harvesting equipment, have to be rootstocks. There'll be lots of changes required to fit with the spray technology. But again, having the spray technology progress being made makes it ready to fit into those programs and systems.
Well, I'm always an optimistic person, and the growers are always innovative, especially in California. We will change based on what is available, but of course, as Franz said, the investment is a 20, 25, 30-year investment, and you can't change it every year. So they have to have a technology that fits to what we're doing, but we will always modify to cope with if somebody comes up with a good navel orange worm control technology, I'll change my planting.
Okay, well that's great and pretty optimistic to hear about this innovation, trying to think about the ways that maybe these technologies can be implemented in the orchard, and also considering how if you're designing an orchard, what are some of these ways you can integrate technology into it. So I'll ask one last question, I guess, and then we can see if there's anything we missed. So is there anything that with your experience that you feel like a big takeaway, that if you could give advice to a new up-and-coming spray technology company, what is the biggest need that you see?
I think we've identified for the most part the needs, or discussed, where the potential opportunities are. I would speak more to kind of that integration period or that adoption period, and how different farms will implement that technology. Again, I can't speak enough about simplicity. It's not just a product that a grower purchases and is expected to work, because it's evolving, it's changing, whether it's the weather or the conditions it's being utilized under. There's constant change. So that need for support, as Franz mentioned when we were just getting started, is key. The training aspect that I had mentioned is key. And being innovative as growers are, that Bharat mentioned, is key as well. But I cannot stress enough, simplistic is key when adopting this technology.
Developing new technologies, our major need is spray coverage. We need to have as good a spray coverage you can get. We need that, and of course, from the regulatory standpoint, the drift is a major issue. They cancel our products every time because of the drift, and so technologies that will reduce drift is going to be always a needed technology for us.
I think I echo what the gentleman said. I think the strategic, say drones, if you will, provide you a tool of spraying in a way that you'd never sprayed before. You can spot spray, you can edge spray. Now that doesn't mean it's a done deal and you can walk out the door with it, but the potential to do that now with a reduced potential for reduced drift on the edges, that is starting to, it's the dawn of that potential. And then from a different perspective, once you've got that out there, having support, if it's a farm-based system, not a third-party system, having support for growers and their staff around the clock, because that's what's being used around. It will be used around the clock. more than a company might think of when they're initially planning out opening a market. I think that will sustain the system, the product, and be beneficial to its adoption.
All right, so any last minute thoughts? And I guess we have a moment or two, we have a few minutes if anyone has any questions for the panelists before we wrap up. I think you guys did a great job covering everything. Oh, yeah.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts. So I was thinking, given all this complexity behind training and troubleshooting in the orchard, if you have thought about maybe a leasing model or a custom application model where you don't actually own the equipment, but you have, again, you can rent something. And have you had those discussions with the companies instead of buying the equipment, and also connected to the point that technology is changing so fast that you may even think about a leasing model? So have you thought about that, and have any conversation with the providers of these companies along those lines?
Yeah, that's certainly been something that's been considered, but not explored highly internally. You know, we've been approached with that sort of adoption plan, or different outfits that have maybe purchased equipment and would you know, see an opportunity to utilize. But due to some of our food safety certifications, due to some of our quality goals and internal company goals, we maintain the majority of our plant protection product or applications internally. So not something that's been reviewed extensively.
Yes. Oh. Maybe you can project.
Yeah, okay. So I'm from Wageningen, the Netherlands. Did you also consider using synthetic data, so game engines, to simulate wind and see what the drift is doing, just to test all different kind of situations, what could happen related to drift? That's question one. And do you use the drift standards of Europe? So that's also a question two.
I know that Dr. Peter Larby with UC at Parlier is working on an app that will take the current weather data and project your risk for drift and coverage. And I'm sure that once he has that data packaged, that finished, you could plug in different conditions to determine drift risk. But I'm not, and so the second part of your question about European standards, not aware that they're currently being applied in our fields. Okay. I know several of my colleagues out of other extension advisors have spent a lot of time in Europe. I'm thinking of Gwen Hotheisel up in Washington State. She's very familiar with the European standards, and I confess I'm not as up to date as I could be.
Okay, well, thank you very much for you all, your insights, and taking the time to be here. And thank you to everybody who listened. So with that, we'll close out our panel. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.